Okay, I'm now going to go through how we make the edging for the tabletop. If you look at this example here, you can see that there are two long sides which are identical, and we've got two short sides. It's essential that the long and the short sides are both exactly the same distance. To achieve this, I've got two pieces of wood which are cut to the correct thickness, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stack these two on top of one another. Now this here is the face that will eventually look upwards, so I'm going to mark that with a T to show that this forms the top surface. So I'm now going to stack them so that these are on top of one another, like so, and I'm going to wrap some masking tape around these so that the pieces don't move when we put them onto the miter saw. So I just need to put one piece around it, like so. I can then get a second piece of tape, wrap it around like that, and that there makes the first stage. I would do this on the sides that will make up the long sides. I'll repeat it for this, and that will be then used to make up the short sides, and that makes up the first stage. Okay, the second stage is that we need to set up the miter saw. This is a miter saw here. If you look here, you can see that there are different angles on the gauge here. To move the saw, we have to push it in where the arrow is, and we can then adjust it to the correct angle, which for the table is 45 degrees, so that we get a mitered joint. So we set it to 45 degrees. What we're then going to do is we get our pieces of wood, and we're looking for the T that we drew on earlier, which I don't know that you can see it is here. So there's the T, and what we do is we place it in to the miter saw so that the T is facing upwards. We're going to get a clamp, and we're going to clamp the work in place so that it doesn't move like so. What we can now do is we're now going to create the first cut so that we have the minimum amount of waste on this side. So So that's our first cut completed. To release this particular clamp, I need to push my thumb here, and that will release the work. So the benefit of taping the two pieces of wood together is you can see that these are precisely at the same point. What we can now do is measure the distance to form, in this case we're going to do the long sides. So we can get our tape measure. The long sides are going to be 520 millimeters in length. So there's my sides that I've just cut here. I'm going to measure out from the side that I've just cut, and I'm going to measure 520 millimeters, which is here, and I've just created a line to form where the second side is going to be cut there. This is what I'm going to put back into the miter saw. So I put the line up against the saw blade here. You can see that the opposite end of the wood is going in the opposite direction, but it's still at 45 degrees. I'm going to clamp my work in place. Because these are taped together, they'll stay the same. And that there are the first two sides completed, and you can see because we've used the tape, they're exactly the same length, Those two are going to form the long side. All we need to do now is repeat the same process for the short sides. The only difference with the short side is that these are going to be done 380mm in length, but they're done exactly the same way. So we're looking for where the T is. There's the T there. We're going to place it into the mitre saw with the T facing up. Clamp the work into place, like so, and then cut the next side. So these are the two sides that I've just cut. I'm looking for my T. I'm going to get my tape measure. I'm going to measure 380mm this time. So find 380mm. Measure it on here. It's probably easier to use a steel ruler rather than a tape measure. So that's where 380 is. I'm going to place it into my, this time, because I've marked it on the opposite side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this the opposite way around. So I push it in, set it to 45 degrees, put it into the correct place. You can see that the line meets up with where the saw is. I'm going to clamp it into place. So, and then I'm going to cut the next side. Okay, so that there completes the second stage. Okay, so on stage 3, we're going to need one of these tabletops. So these are cut to a standard size, and we're going to need to cut it smaller. You're going to need your sides. So these form the two long sides, these form the two short sides. And by the time we finish this stage, we'll be close to something resembling this. It's worth at this point checking these sides. If you've done the last stage correctly, then these two should be identical in length here, and similarly these two should also be identical in their length when you put them on the end like that. So to make this the correct size, what we need to do is we take one of the short sides and one of the long sides. We put the long side up against the long edge there and the short side up, and we form the corner here. So this is where we formed our first mitre join here, and what we're then going to do is, using a very sharp pencil, we're going to draw a line to show the width of the piece of wood, which is here, and we're going to draw a second line which shows the length of the tabletop, and you'll see that it's on the inside of this mitre here. This line needs to be drawn very, very accurately. It's really important that you get this done accurate. You know, and it will save a lot of time if you can get this part done accurately. The next stage is that you need to get your technician or your teacher to cut this tabletop so that it's to the correct size. Okay, so what we've done now is we've cut the centre panel so that it's the correct size. If we were to pinch in the corners, you can see that it fits pretty well. And so we're now ready to move on to stage 4. So stage 4 is where we start to glue this together, and what you're going to need for this stage is you'll need 2 of the short clamps and you need 1 large clamp. You'll notice that I've set these up so that the handles extend on the side of the bench, which just makes things a little bit simpler. So what we're now going to do is we're going to take our tabletop and the table sides, we're going to put these onto the sash clamps like so. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to clamp this dry. It's always good practice to set the clamps to the correct distances without using any glue first of all, and that makes sure that when you do come to glue it up, using adhesive, everything can be done very quickly and you're not going to have any problems. So I've just placed it onto the sash clamps and I'm just going to clamp these up. It's also a good final opportunity to check that everything fits. So that forms the two sides, which I'm quite happy with. I can now get the longer sash clamp and I can do the other side. So I've just slotted one end in here like so, get my other side. At this point you might want to get an assistant, and I can just now tighten these up. So that there is what it looks like dry. I can do my final checks just to see that all the joints fit together pretty well, and once I'm happy I can then take the clamps back a little bit. So I just do a small turn. I've got my sash clamp ready there. I just do small turns here, here, and what I can now do is put some adhesive onto the whole of the faces here, onto the miters themselves. I do that on all 4 pieces of wood, and I can then put everything back together, tighten the sash clamps up, and that will get all of the sides together.